Good morning.
Good morning.
Please join me in lighting the chalice. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning, in celebration of the life we share together.
Good morning. Thank you, John. That was beautiful. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist congregation of the Low Country, an opportunity that you have to gather together with like-minded people that's able to bring your hearts into this place at the same time and to be able to know who you are. So those of you who are guests or visitors, you're going to be given an opportunity in just a few moments to introduce yourself if you're willing. The other thing I want to let you know is that we have a number of things that are taking place throughout our week and our month. Rough and Tumble will be here Saturday, April 1st. Get the opportunity to look at that. I have seen some of their work. They're really excellent and extraordinary individual a couple. The Social Justice Committee continues to move on with some of its work, if you'd like to be a part of that. And also we heard from Gwen McClune last week. And for those of you that are interested in continuing to support our LGBTQ work, take note of that. Story, Song, and Poetry is coming up on March 18th. Bill Newby. Bill, you're here. Where are you? Yeah, Bill, welcome back. It's good to see you and your bride. Absolutely. Thank you. We're looking forward to that. That's going to be at 7 o'clock on the 18th. Let's see. Another announcement that's been handed to me is the Low Country Coalition Against Hate, of which our social justice people are a part, are sponsoring a presentation and exhibit of art on the children of the Holocaust. That's today at Congregation Beth Yam, the Jewish temple here, from 3 to 5. Admission is free. Donations are accepted. Kathy Quirk, where are you? Yeah, would you stand, Kathy? So if you're a guest and don't know her, contact her, and she'll get you to the right place. Good to see you, Kathy. Thank you. I've also been asked to announce, and this is by way of getting ready to have Tom Duff come up, I've been asked to announce that our Pledge Drive dinner is next Friday, March 17th. That's the last day to make a reservation because we need to order the food for that. So if you've not yet made a reservation, please do so that we can continue our Pledge Drive. And Tom, I'm going to ask you if you would please come up for your announcement, if you would please.
Thank you. I am up here for only one reason. And that's because when Gordon Stamler asked if I would say a few words about this year's pledge drive, I apparently simply didn't have the fortitude to say no. For this reason, I am not here because I want to talk about what this congregation means to me, or what we mean to each other, or what we mean to the wider community. For instance, when it comes to me personally, I am not here because I need to tell you how delighted I was when a few weeks ago my Philadelphia niece, Mamie, came to the service with me. And on the way home, she said, what an uplifting experience it had been. How enthusiastically she had been welcomed. And that this was the sort of congregation she had always dreamt of. And also personally, I'm not here because I want to relate how often the morning service stays with me through the following week. When a phrase or two from the sermon comes to mind, or when I find myself hearing one of the hymns and can't stop myself from singing. Likely, the same impulse has struck some of you, and so please join me in singing just the first stanza. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound Moreover, I'm not here because I want to emphasize what we as a congregation mean to each other. I don't feel the need to mention a recent service in which we expressed our sincere gratitude to all those who have volunteered to undertake various tasks. Tasks that are not always that rewarding to keep this church going. Nor am I here because I feel compelled to recall a vision I had several years ago on this same occasion. A vision of the great success of that year's pledge drive. It was going to bring in so much money and create such public admiration that we would have to replace this building with a veritable cathedral. One with flying buttresses and tall stained glass windows and a parking lot that stretched all the way to Bluffton Parkway. The necessarily enlarged staff would include no less than 20 full-time ministers. Yes, I sense that some of you may feel an urge to point out that none of that came to pass. But let us think. Think about maybe, thanks to you and to others, such as Patricia Friedman, who last week spoke from the heart about this year's pledge drive. Much has happened. We've maintained a magnificent church. We have 4 of the finest ministers on the face of the earth. We have an administrator that others would die for. A piano player who leaves music reverberating in our ears. We have outreach, a social justice committee, music on Malthus, and just as importantly, we continue to have a desire to do more. But I'm not here to talk about those things. Or about my confidence that this year you will pledge generously without any encouragement. The only thing I will talk about is my thankfulness that this congregation is filled with people like Gordon, who, when they ask, whether for our time or our donations, none of us will have the fortitude to say no. Or more accurately, all of us will have the fortitude to say a resounding yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Duff. That's always a delight when you're in front of us. I want to let those of you who are first or second-time visitors here know that there is a special green mug that's in your future. If you have not picked up on your way out, if you take one of these with you, that lets us know that you're kind of new here, and then we can hover around you and embarrass you for being here. This is for you. So if you would please take a green coffee mug at the coffee hour and then hang with us for a little bit, which is also an announcement to say, please stay for our talk back. If you've not been to one, I would suggest to you that it's in the talk back that you get to see who we really are. Some of you who have just come in for the first time, you may be wondering to yourself, are they really that good? Are they really that kind? Are they really that funny, Dr. Duff? And the truth is, yeah, we're all that. And so we want you to know that, want you to be a part of that. I'm going to give you, if you're a guest or visitor for the first or second time, an opportunity to introduce yourself and tell us where you're from, because more than likely somebody else on the other side of the room is from there too. So I'm looking at my right-hand side of the sanctuary. Are there any first or second-time visitors that are on the right, your left? None? On my left, your right, first-time guests or visitors that would be willing to introduce yourself? None? All right. We got work to do, guys. We got work to do. Tom, thank you for that. Dick, I'm going to ask you if you would please bring your opening words.
One more announcement.
There is one? Yes, if you would please, Susan. And then Ann? Okay. This is what Ann and I communicate.
Good morning. I'm Susan Crow. I hate to follow Tom, but I'll refrain from asking you to sing Pennies from Heaven, which is also for free for pledge. I'm curious, by show of hands, how many of you have ever struggled to explain to somebody what Unitarian Universalism is? It's not easy. And also, by show of hand, how many of you have ever wished that you could just put Charlie in front of that neighbor or that friend, and they could just hear Charlie? They come, they visit us. Well, we're trying to give you a tool that lets you do that. So if you found a card in your seat this morning, and we didn't have enough for every seat, we have a committee that's working on this, and we'd like your input. Basically, it's putting Charlie in front of whomever you want to hand it to. If a person hovers their phone over this code, they're going to see Charlie speak for 2 minutes about what Unitarian Universalism is and about UUCL. So we're hoping to print maybe 30 to 50 and for every member of the congregation that you can keep with you. When you have the opportunity, you can hand it out. We don't want to do that, though, without getting your input first. We'd like to make sure you like it and you will use it. Otherwise, there's not much point in printing them. So that's why it says draft on it. If you would, there's 2 ways you can give us feedback. You can either email one of our committee members, Dear Ann Harrison, @gmail.com, or if you want to give some immediate feedback, there's a basket on the table in the foyer with some orange cards and lots of pencils out there. Just give us your suggestions. Someone already pointed out, for example, that we left off the street address. So we know we need to change that. But while we don't have the principles on here, I'm going to say that right up front, because they're already on a card out there that people can take. And they're under review and may change by the summer. So what we've purposefully done is our website, our street address will be on here, our logo, and a few one-liner kind of provocative statements that might pique people's curiosity. So, but the main feature of this, 90% of the purpose, is for people to see Charlie speaking. So let us know what you think, and then once we get your feedback, hopefully no later than April 1st, isn't that what we said? Yeah. We will then print some up, and everybody can have some. Thanks.
Thank you, Susan. I'm Dick Hood. I'm one of the 4. My head is not going to make it through that door, and I hope that in the coming weeks I have to park at Lowe's in order to find a spot here. I want to extend my welcome as well. This morning I'm going to be trying to tackle the topic of prayer, which is not a term you hear within the walls of Unitarian Universalist churches very often. So I'd like to start by a little poem by Mary Oliver. She wrote a very brief poem called Praying, which I found meaningful. It doesn't have to be the blue iris. It could be weeds in a vacant lot, or a few small stones. Just pay attention. Then patch a few words together, and don't try to make them elaborate. This isn't a contest, but the doorway into thanks and a silence in which another voice may speak. We're going to open our service this morning singing hymn number 131. Please stand if you're willing and able.
This is our time for sharing joys and sorrows. If you have a joy and share it with us, we will be happy with you. And if you have a concern, we hope sharing it will lighten your burden. This part of the service is not live streamed. We ask that you make no announcements and no political statements. Come forward, take a stone from the table, tell us who you are and your joy or concern. And that's all. Oh, then put your stone in the can. Hi,
Join me in this.
okay.
So Betsy a minute ago made a little slip. Is today your birthday, young man?
Mike.
Mike, you're turning away. Does anybody else have a birthday today? Okay, I think we all need to sing for Mike. Ready? Ready? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Mike. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you all, that was beautiful. I just need to point out that logic is not my strong suit. And I want to, I don't know if this is a defense of what I did with the clocks, but I'm going to tell you anyway. First of all, I set the clock by my bed an hour ahead. That's what you're supposed to do, right?
Yes.
Now comes the mistake. And I shared in logic maybe with Charlie, who didn't mention taking the green mugs or leaving the green mugs here. So what I did was when I went to set the alarm, I set the alarm ahead an hour as well. I must have been tired or something.
It's hard.
It's difficult, yeah, being a man. Anyway, thank you all for your beautiful rendition of that song.
So I'm going to put 2 stones in the cairn for the joys and concerns that are unspoken. Now, if you look at in your hymnal to a number in the back, 461, we're using a different affirmation today. Okay? Nothing worth doing is completed in our lifetime. Therefore, we are saved by hope. Nothing true or beautiful or good makes complete sense in any immediate context of history. Therefore, we are saved by faith. Nothing we do, however virtuous, can be accomplished alone. Therefore, we are saved by love. No virtuous act is quite as virtuous from the standpoint of our friend or foe as from our own. Therefore, we are saved by the final form of love, which is forgiveness. And now we'll get a message for all ages from Ann Harrison.
So some people pray, and others do not. You certainly do not have to pray to be a Unitarian Universalist. Reverend Dick Hood is going to speak about prayer today, and I'm going to share a true story that happened at the UU Church in Brookfield, Wisconsin. I want to just mention that that little church that I'm going to speak about is about 20 minutes away from where Rick and Laura McFadden are going to be moving in a couple of weeks. They actually have another church that's closer. They're lucky. This will be their second choice if they don't like the first one they're going to. But this little church, many, many years ago, a young girl was going to church there, and her name was Nancy. And she was about 7 or 8 years old. This little girl was maybe, second grade. And one Sunday after church, this little girl walked up to the minister and said, "Can I ask you a question?" And he said, "Sure." And she said, "Can you tell me what prayer should I say before I go to bed at night?" Well, the minister at the time was a man whose name was Reverend Christopher Rabel, and I'm not sure that he was actually ready for this question. He told her that he was going to have to think about it and that he would get back to her with an answer, which he did. He actually wrote her a letter, and it went like this. He said, "Dear Nancy, you may not have realized it, but when you asked me to suggest a bedtime prayer for you, you raised a very important question. It's a question which people have wondered about and argued about for thousands of years. A question which many people think that they can answer, and they answer it in different ways. It's also a question which many other people are not sure can be answered. And the question is this: is there a God who can change people and change things if asked to?" You see, some people believe God can give them presents, or make it rain, or cure their troubles if they ask God in the right way. Others believe asking God for help is a way of feeling closer to God, no matter what happens in response. Some people believe God will do what is best for everybody, and that to ask God for special favors is selfishness. Others believe God is a force of nature, so we cannot pray to God any more than we can pray to a tree or a stone. And then there are those who believe we ought to think only about people and not about God at all. As you learn more about this world and about others' beliefs, you will have to decide what you think about all this. With your parents' help and with the help of others, you'll form your own beliefs. But you have asked me a question which can't wait until you have learned more and thought more. You want me to suggest a bedtime prayer for you. Well, I think I can help if, at least for the time being, you think about prayer as not as asking God for favors, but as an honest expression of some of your feelings. And I especially mean 3 kinds of feelings. Sometimes you feel thankful for nice things which have happened to you. And if you express your thanks at bedtime, you may enjoy them all over again. Sometimes you feel sorry for things that you've done or said, and if you express your feelings of being sorry before you go to sleep, you might feel much better. And sometimes you have hopes for yourself and other people, and if you express your hopes in prayer, you may be able to see what you can do to make them come true. So I'm suggesting that each night you make up your own prayer. It could begin like, "Tonight I'm thankful for," and then you could think of the most important things that you are thankful for. And it could continue, "Tonight I'm sorry for," and then you could think of the most important things that you're sorry for. And your prayer could end with, "Tomorrow I hope." And you could think of some of the most important things that you hope for and that you think how you can help to bring them about. And when you do this, if you want to pray by thinking that you are talking to God, go right ahead. But that doesn't matter as much as it does matter that you really mean what you say. I think you'll discover that if you pray like this at night, it may not change God or change things or change other people, but it will change you. And it will change how you think and feel about God and things and other people. I hope you'll talk to your parents about all this. You may even want to talk to your friends of other religions to see what they think. But whoever else you talk to, you'll have to decide for yourself. How you work out your thinking and feeling about prayer may well be one of the most important things you do in your life. But don't let that scare you. Understanding your feelings of gratitude and regret and hope is a wonderful process. Thank you for asking, your minister, Christopher Rabel. Well, I love this letter. I love it on so many levels. So in the spirit of this letter, I'm going to suggest that whether you are one who prays or one who does not, that before you go to bed tonight, you just take a moment to affirm gratitude, express regret, and articulate a hope. And then, if it doesn't feel too weird, or maybe even if it does a little, when you're all done, you might just say to yourself, let it be so. And that's my message for the morning. I do see some little people in the back row, so we will probably depart at this moment. Thank you.
To me, it was really gratifying this morning to hear what Kathy said about our donations last week to the Sandalwood Food Bank. That could become a habit. And when she was speaking about abundance, I was thinking there are a few people, very, very few people, like Barbara and I, who are from Georgia. And but if that's the case, you're bound to have a pickup truck. And those of you that are from further north, I'm sure you have SUVs that can hold a lot of groceries. And if there's a problem getting it into the church, some of the younger guys like me can help you with that. Anyway, thanks to everybody for that response. And then came Tom Duff. Doesn't that make you want to give something to the church? Here comes an opportunity.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank Anne, and I wish I were Christopher Rabel, that minister. I don't know him personally, but he did a darn good job summarizing. So some of this is going to be a little different than what I had initially planned. But I did want to speak about prayer because our theme for the month is vulnerability. And somehow prayer and vulnerability are related to one another, that as we feel more vulnerable, perhaps we are more likely to engage in that practice that's called prayer. And I started thinking about, I have been preaching reasonably steadily since 1969, my second year of seminary. That's 53 years ago, which happens to match the number of years I've been married. I don't know if there's a relationship there or not, but not once in 53 years have I ever preached about prayer. Not once. All those damn sermons, I mean, hundreds of them, maybe not thousands, but hundreds of them literally. I have never talked about prayer. Why? Why have I never talked about it? Why have I avoided this subject? And the fact is, I think that, first of all, prayer is something that is intensely personal. This is not something where I can give you an outline and say, you do this and this and this, and it's prayer and it's good. I'm sorry, life is not that simple. And compounding with the fact that it's really something intensely personal that doesn't lend itself to talking from the pulpit about, coupled with that is that we Unitarian Universalists are uncomfortable about prayer. It is not a word that we often use. It's not something that we even feel maybe we should talk about. I hope that by the end of the sermon, when we have sermon discussion, that maybe we can get over that reluctance. But it's not the kind of topic that lends itself to normal church-related discussion. We are uncomfortable with prayer. And you can see that very clearly in Joys and Concerns. That people will come up, members of our congregation, and very often express very deep personal concerns about something in their life or something in somebody else's life. And they will say at the end, please remember them. Please give them good thoughts. Please emanate your spirit. There's all kinds of words that we use, but we don't say very often, pray for them. That is just not something that is part of our culture as Unitarian Universalists. We don't have prayer lists, as many, both Protestant and Catholic and some other world religions have some sort of lists that are people that should be remembered in our prayers, whether they be friends or strangers. We don't do that. So how do we respond to someone who does come across and say, please pray for me, or please pray for so-and-so? That's the question that I'll get to at the very end of the sermon, and I promise I will answer that question. I can also promise it's the only answer you're going to get out of the whole sermon. You will not get, how do I pray? But I can say that we actually learned about prayer. Prayer is a learned response. And for me, I never learned it at home. Neither one of my parents prayed. We did not say grace before dinner, except maybe on Christmas. never on Easter, but maybe on Christmas. But I did learn to pray in the first grade. And I'm dating myself here by confessing to you that I remember prayer in public schools. I'm that old. And Miss Kite was my first grade teacher, and she taught us how to pray. And she said, you sit at your desk, feet on the floor, sit straight, fold your hands, and bow your head. And then she would say the prayer. You were not responsible for coming up with anything yourself, not like that poor girl who wrote the letter, and that was a wonderful story about how you're supposed to be thinking about prayer yourself. Initially, I was taught, no, you just do the right things, put your feet on the floor, and somebody will pray for you, or with you, or about you, or whatever. And there was a subtle tone there, even back that I could feel when I was 7 or 8, whenever I was in first grade, that if you didn't pray right, if your feet weren't on the floor, that somehow God was going to disapprove. And, consequently, although this was never mentioned, if you didn't pray right, God might punish you. Ooh. Them serious words. I kept my feet on the floor. You can be sure of that. Now, that obviously is a very childish kind of view about prayer, but I think the remnants of that experience stay with us. And I think the remnants, perhaps, that you have had and how you learned how to pray have stayed with you. Prayer for us gets a bad name as Unitarian Universalists, and it does because of this idea that somehow we control God, that somehow we can pray and think the Red Sox will win the World Series if I pray hard enough. And, of course, the more Bostonians who pray, the better the chances of the Red Sox. As I was preparing this sermon, I came across another sermon, and I admit that I don't remember who it was, but I've stolen this analogy. This minister talked about the fickle ATM machine as a metaphor for prayer. I had to read on when I read those words. That's kind of an interesting. And his point is that you put the card in, and it's got to really be the right card. Not everybody gets to go to the fickle ATM machine of prayer. You either perhaps have to have the right attitude, or you have to have the right conduct. Sinners are not as likely to get prayers answered. You've got to have your credentials in order. And you put the card in, and you punch in, this is part of the metaphor, what you want, and then you wait. Just like at the ATM machine, it doesn't spit that cash out right away. It checks you out to make sure you got the money in the account. And the metaphor that this minister used was you wait, and eventually, somehow you'll get something out of the ATM machine, but sometimes it's not what you asked for, or it's not completely what you wanted, or sometimes it's even a surprise. And once in a great while, you'll just get a big notice that says, reject, reject, reject. That's the kind of attitude that makes us uncomfortable as Unitarian Universalists, because I think that it's a good thing I can say with great confidence that we have rejected that kind of prayer. It's tough. As I said, prayer is personal. And I'm not going to tell you how to pray or what you should pray or if you want to pray or if you don't want to pray. But I can say that there are prayers of confession. Christopher Rabel said the same thing. Aspiration. Prayers of hope. prayers of looking inward to find out what's really inside. There's all different kinds and forms of prayer. They do not have to be verbalized, obviously. I think we can all agree on that. But the content and the theology behind it really are not important for us as Unitarian Universalists. At least that's my thought. And sometimes we don't pray to anybody, which is usually part of prayer. Starts with dear something or other. Sometimes we simply talk about the spirit of life. Sometimes we talk about Mother Earth, or in the name of love. All those kinds of things, and they're all okay. There is no such thing as a bad prayer, even if you want to pray for the Red Sox. It's okay. I'm not sure the ATM machine won't flash that reject sign if that's all you ever pray for. But it's okay still. I can say that as a Bostonian. So you're not going to get the answer from me about what is prayer or what is acceptable or how do we handle it or any of that. That is up to you personally. I'm a Quaker in that regard, that there is no model that everyone has to relate to. However, there's something that comes about when we are asked to pray for somebody else. When we get that feeling that somehow there's a situation, sometimes we ask ourselves to pray for other people because of a situation in which we don't really have any control over anything except maybe to think about praying for it. Charlie, a couple of weeks ago, talked about the idea that there's a DNA within us that is love. Every time since I've heard that sermon, I go through the checkout counter and I see Snickers bars. I think of Charlie. If you didn't hear the sermon, that doesn't make any sense at all. But trust me, for those who did hear the sermon, I think that's appropriate. But the idea is that in each of us, there is some aspect that we want to show love. I want to look at that a little bit differently. I call it the I want to do something syndrome. That there are situations in life where we simply want to do something, but we can't do anything. We can't cure cancer. I can't even make the Red Sox. Well, we won't go to the Red Sox again. We won't do that. But there are many situations in our life where we aspire for something to happen, but we don't have any power to make it happen. And therefore, we resort to prayer. Some of us. And if you don't, if this doesn't make any sense to you, well, that's okay too. But there is, I think, in most people, the idea that somehow if we can aspire or simply state internally about our hopes and our dreams of what can happen and what should happen, even if it doesn't happen, that constitutes, for me at least, prayer. A couple of weeks ago, a close friend of both my wife and myself was in a terrible automobile accident. And he broke many bones, and he had suffered and is suffering a good deal of mental trauma from this accident. Just one of those horrible things that happen in life that you pray, is another term, never happens to you. And he was a very good a friend of mine, but his wife was even a closer friend. There was even a closer bond to my wife. And she sent this email and described what happened. And she described the pain that he was in and the pain that she was in. And she said at the end of the email, "Please pray for us." How do you respond to that? Thank God it was an email. I wish you get a little time to think about it or whatever. I know it isn't somebody asking you directly. But here is a friend, someone who has visited us on several occasions in Maine, who I worked with this gentleman as a volunteer in the United Way. This is a close person who's now somehow in need. How do I respond to that very question? And here's the answer. I told you I'd give you one answer. That's nothing else. Tell him yes. Tell him yes, you will pray for them. Why? The lady who wrote the email was not interested in a theological discussion about Unitarian Universalist varying views on prayer. Didn't matter. It doesn't matter if somebody says, "I love you," that you ask them to define love in 2 pages or less of well thought out text. It doesn't matter if somebody says, "Look, isn't it so beautiful?" You don't ask about what your definition of beauty. You simply accept it. And the same is true about prayer. And it's really our hang-ups over that word. We don't have any hang-ups over the word about love or beauty, but when it gets to prayer, somehow we feel oh no, we need to define our terms here. We need to set everybody straight. That doesn't need to happen. If somebody asks for you to pray, say yes. Why? Because in our 7 principles, in addition to our DNA of love, we talk about compassion, we talk about helping hurting people, we talk about the interdependent web, that we are somehow responsible for other people and how they feel. And when you strip it all down, it's just a darn good thing that we are in some way responsible and we are caring people. And if caring says to say, "Yes, I'll pray for you," then we ought to do it. And forget the definition. Forget the theology. Nobody ever gave you an A in theology class. I never got one either, and I went to school to learn about that kind of stuff. Sometimes responding to human needs simply makes us say things that, yes, maybe we should have a little discomfort on, but we don't need to. There's no need. I didn't learn that in 1st grade. All I learned was keep your feet on the floor and your head bowed. And you know what? There's still a lot of people that think that that's the way to pray. And if they think that, let them. You are not going to convince them any differently. But what I'm asking you is when you get that question asked to you or that request, pray for me. Don't think about what you learned in 1st grade. Don't think about your theological hang-ups. Focus on the person and say yes. That's the least you can do. And that's my prayer for you.
So as we're getting set up here, it's been a while since I've said this, and we've said this, so we'll just toss this out again. If anybody is a musician, or if you like to sing, see me or any of these folks after, we'd love to have you join us. One thing we've done for years now at this congregation, and we've all really prided ourselves in, is giving you a good amount of variety. And if we get extra people in here, you can get all kinds of variety. So, and today is definitely going to be variety. This song, we think of this as a prayer of hope.
Did I turn on that microphone? Is that on? Somebody say something.
Testing.
Yep.
to continue to keep our way lit in front of us. I also want to thank Dick for that fabulous message. It's no small thing for me that Dick has been speaking since Woodstock. I'm not sure which is the chicken or which is the egg, but it's duly noted that year was when it started. Thank you, Dick. And your message always was particularly poignant. So I'm going to give this back over to Dick now for the closing words.
Reverend Kate Braystrip is a Unitarian Universalist minister who works as a chaplain for the main warden service. And she is called out only when there is serious spiritual issues like death, missing children, and all kinds of horrible things. Nobody ever calls her to tell her the weather is fine and all is well. And she has written a book called Here When You Need Me. If any of you are interested, it's a wonderful book and a wonderful story about her own somewhat tragic life. She wrote these words about prayer. What prayer can do is help us to live consciously, honorably, and compassionately. As long as prayer helps me to be more loving, then I need prayer. As long as prayer serves as a potent means of sharing my love with others, then truly I need prayer. Amen.
Shall we stand to extinguish the chalice? While we extinguish this flame, we still carry in our hearts the light of truth, the warmth of community, and fire of commitment until we are together again.